Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. Here at Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer here. Thought today we just kind of talk about something that's come up quite a bit for me, especially as it is in a professional realm. A lot of people trying to figure out what the ideal role is for them, what that looks like. Some people may be struggling with currently where they're at, maybe thinking the grass is greener. Might not always be the case, which a lot of times it's not, but it could be. But I thought we just take some time to define what I would call being in the zone, or really creating an ideal work role, or thinking about that and working towards that. So when I say in the zone, like in the zone at work, hopefully many of you have at least felt it from time to time, but I know a lot of people have not. Most, when we look at the research, I think it was out there not too long ago, depending on where you looked, 33, 34%, something like that. That's all of the higher the percentage was of people that are actually engaged in their work, which means folks are not going to be productive. They're not going to be engaged. They're a flight risk, or you might be that person, or you're not as efficient. There's not as much balance, so creativity is going to lack. There's not as much job satisfaction, and just all around, people just aren't happy. Okay. So how do we define that? So there's ways that we can do that. And from, one of the assessments that I use, the predictive index, these are just some things that even I wish we were taught, like in high school. Like, what am I good at? What are my strengths? What should I watch for? What should I look for? What would be ideal for me? But when we did the research when Predictive Index did the research, they found that, 4 main things really drive engagement, or however you want to look at it, disengagement inside of a company. But I want to talk about engagement because that's what I want. If you're listening to this as an individual and maybe a manager or an owner of a company, you might be, as an owner, you might be thinking about, hey, how do I get my folks more engaged? How do I get more out of them? And that's not just for the low performers. It might be those top performers that you're not paying attention to. And then one day they just up and leave and you wonder what's going on. Like, how can I help them? But how can I help even my managers help those people underneath them? So there's a few things that I'll go over with you. I'm not going to go into great detail, but hopefully just give you some tips, because these are the ones. Actually, I was just sitting with the leader Tuesday morning, and I said, hey, here's the 4 things. If you're going to do something as far as engagement goes, and he was all ears, wrote it down. He's like, tell me those again, just go over them. So here they are, and we'll go over each one. The first one is job fit. Okay. And most people think, hey, I can do the job. When we use analytics, and when we're even if you don't, but that's what we do. We use analytics to make better people decisions. So when we're looking at that, we're looking at, where does this person fit? Will they do this job, and will they do it well for long periods of time? Not can. There's a lot of things you can do. And if you're watching this right now and you're thinking, well, there's a lot of things I can do, what would make me happy? What I would challenge you with is to look at, what do you kind of want to do? What will you do, and will you do it well for long periods of time? Okay. And trying to understand what that job fit looks like for you. The second one is the manager. So hopefully, if you're a manager of people, you're paying attention to this, because the first thing that you can do with your people is make sure right person, right seat. And there's a way that I'll talk about here in just a few minutes about how we do that for folks. The third one is the team. A lot of people, again, an example from actually last night was sitting with the CEO. He's like, I think I have the right team. They just, they just don't get along well together. And I said, well, you might have the right team, and I think you do, but they just don't know one another. They don't know what each other's strengths are. They don't know how to complement one another. So it's not always that you're on the wrong team. It's maybe the team doesn't know what they have. Okay. And it could be on the wrong team, but think about all the options there. And then the fourth one, obviously, is culture. You want to make sure that you either as an individual going into a company that you fit the culture, or as a manager or an owner, that person fits the culture of the company, because they can fit the job. You can have great managers. They might fit in well with the team, especially from a behavioral standpoint. But if they don't fit you culturally, a lot of times they'll just leave. And sometimes it causes a lot of damage for everybody else who does fit, because they are typically the ones who know first and foremost. So when we look at these things, identifying what those roles are, so a job fit. One of the nice things about predictive index and some of the other assessments that we use, but specifically predictive index, is there's a feature in there that allows us to identify what that role requires from a behavioral standpoint. All right. And this is where we go back to can versus will. All right. When you don't have to behave any different than what comes natural to you, it doesn't take as much effort. So you're more engaged, you're more productive, you're more efficient, you're happier. All right. And that's where most people struggle, is that difference between can and will. I'm not saying you can't do jobs, but what I'm saying is, if you're listening to this and you're intrigued, I would challenge you, if you're looking for a new role or how to perhaps amplify your role where you're currently at, is look at how it is you're wired, and look at those behavioral requirements for the role. Now, if you don't know them, that's where that's where our analytics come in, because you can define that. And what we do is we usually get some people from the company to define that role. We work with them to define what those behavioral requirements are of the role. And then we get close matches. And again, what we're trying to achieve, and it's not a silver bullet, but it gives us a good idea of what we're looking for in that role. So if we're looking for somebody that might be very extroverted and social, I don't want to put somebody in there that's going to be miserable, that's more introverted and a more internal thinker. I don't necessarily want my accountant to lack on the details, even though somebody might come in and they interview very well for that position. Now, I'm hoping this makes sense, and I'm hoping it makes sense to you. So if you're listening to this as an individual, saying, because a lot of people are doing this right now, what's my next step? Okay, either inside my company, I'm trying to figure it out inside my company because I still like my company and I want to stay there. I'm just a little right? I'm just kind of going through the motions. I want to kind of be on fire again. Or you're looking for that next role. You might be out of work, or you might be somebody that is just coming into the job force. You might be a young person right now. We're sitting almost on the 1st of May here as I record this, and a lot of people are coming into the job market that haven't had a lot of instruction. I know one of the things that we're doing with our intern right now is just kind of gauging, going over through all the assessments, and part of his homework is to figure out, with our help, what that ideal role looks like for him. Now, is he going to plop right into it the first job he has? Probably not. Okay. But he's going to know what to look out for. Okay. So we're going to go through those, with him. And obviously he's a good fit here with all those four. He might argue with you a little bit on the manager piece, but I doubt it. So when you look at those things, creating that job role, doing your due diligence up front, either as an individual to figure out how you're wired, or if you're running a company, if you're managing people, to really plug in what are those behavioral requirements of the role. Those are the two big ones. When you look at that from a team perspective, the nice thing about again, the analytics that we use with predictive index is you have the ability, or we have the ability for our clients to go in there and look and really put everybody in a blender and look at what those scores are behaviorally. Look at the team dynamic, which is just fascinating. And we've been doing a lot of that now because companies want to better their teams. They want to know what they have. They want to keep their people. And it's nice for the teams. And I had, I think, 5 sessions so far this week with different companies just on that. It's usually about, a 45-minute to an hour session. So if you are a client and, you want that and haven't gotten it yet, please get in contact with us. So we look at that team, we look at all the team dynamics and look at the business strategy. And one of the questions we're trying to come up with is, does my talent align with that business strategy to get me the business results that I want? Okay, let me say that again. Does the talent that I have currently on that team, does it align with that business strategy? So does my talent strategy align with my business strategy to get me those business results that we're wanting? So you want a high impact team. It doesn't necessarily always mean adding somebody. But here's the other thing that I mentioned earlier. I had someone, again, last night, he was looking at his team. He's a CEO. He's looking at one of his teams. Says to me, I think I have the right team. I'm not sure. And for the past couple years, what he's been doing is they've all been remote. So they don't know one another, things like that. And, my suggestion to him would be like, hey, bring everybody together. Let's do this. Let's you and I first go over it, see what you have, and then come up with a game plan. And so that's what we're going to do. But a lot of times that will work when there are challenges and issues inside of a team. So rather than just saying, hey, look, this person's causing trouble, is to have everybody understand what everybody's bringing to the table and work through that, workshop that a little bit, have somebody facilitate that discussion between those team members and understand, okay, guys, we have what we need. Or if we don't, here's the deficit, and this has to be our next strategic hire. This is what we need. To whatever. So the challenges that we're facing, those kinds of things. But a lot of times, and again, if you're a manager and owner, listen to this. Many times that team doesn't understand, or the manager doesn't understand the team and what they have and how to approach those things, what that team needs. Okay, a lot of times the managers are wildly behaviorally different than the people that they're supervising, and then they have to shift, which could be huge in a lot of cases. You have the employees go, wow, he or she, my manager's really changed, and it's really just looking at everybody and seeing what you have and making the most out of it. And then the fourth one is culture, which, that can build right off of teams. We like to, when we look at culture, we like to have our core values up there and really help people understand what those core values are. We're trying to interview for those as well when we come in. So that's something that we're doing up front. So those 4 things, when we're looking at that ideal fit for you. So if you're going to be in the zone, and this is what we know, and again, it's not a silver bullet, but you can really move the needle far if you start to understand, where do I fit? Like, what is my ideal role? Okay. Do I have a great manager? Or you might be that manager. You might be that owner or that manager of the company and say, how can I improve my managerial skills, my leadership skills? How can I guide and direct people better? Do we have the right team? Okay. Is there somebody we need to bring in, or is there somebody better off in another department? What do we have? How can we build from that? And is it aligning to our business strategy? And is that clear? And of course, the culture piece. So a couple of the tools, if you're interested in any further information, I like some of the tools that we utilize with the analytics. Some of the things that I've been talking about is the coaching guide. So what a coaching guide does is it overlays the behavioral requirements of the role onto that person, so you can see where any any of those gaps are, which is nice for managers because we sometimes don't always know where to provide feedback. And what we're doing is we're providing feedback objectively instead of how most of us have received it is subjectively. We're using that data, what we know the role is. So I'm not forcing my bias on how I think that person should behave. I'm using the analytics to make a more informed decision, more informed coaching. And then the other nice thing about it is if you are that kind of person, okay, so you're that person that might be looking for a different role inside your company or just a different role elsewhere, or like I said, you might be coming out of, college, school, whatever, and you say, okay, well, how can I get some understanding? One of the other tools that we utilize quite a bit is something we call a personal development graph. And again, it's going to give you the strengths of your behavior, of all your, kind of different behaviors. It's going to give you some of the caution areas that you need to be aware of. And it's going to give you some self-coaching tips, but it's all based off that data, the behavioral data. It's not giving you, wildly subjective. It's more objective based on how you're wired. And so coming back and wrapping this all up again, to really get in that ideal work role or get in the zone. Okay. We need, search for that right job fit, good manager. So if you're that manager and unsure, reach out to us. The team, make sure that team is what you need. Make sure it aligns with the business strategy of the company. Make sure that culture is solid. And you should be hiring off all of those as well. So when you bring people in, you should be looking at, do they fit the job? What manager are we going to put them with? What team are they going to be with? Do they fit the culture? And if you're an individual looking at this now and hearing this, hopefully this helps. When you go into interview, you should be asking questions about what are the requirements of that job, especially behaviorally. Who am I going to be around? What are the expectations? You might even ask, and I would, who's going to be my manager? What's that manager like? Hopefully you're interviewing with that person so you get an idea. That would be ideal, but I realize some companies don't do that. Look, ask about the team. Who's on the team? What are they like? What are we trying to accomplish? What is that business strategy? Am I going to fit? And then, lastly, obviously ask about the culture. You want to make sure you fit. Okay. Because all this, again, being in the zone, what I want, when people are in that zone, they tend to be highly engaged. And that's what we're looking for. As business owners, that's what we're looking for. As managers, that's what we're looking for. But as individuals, I don't want to go somewhere for the majority of my day and be miserable. I think most people, again, there's exceptions to this, but most people, when they're in the zone, what happens to them is they are productive. Okay. So they're even more productive. So you might have somebody that, is a top performer. You might be that top performer. And you're like, how can I get more out of myself? Doing those four things, getting aligned with those four things, more engaged, more efficient. Everybody's looking for better balance between their home and work life. Right now, better creativity, again, job satisfaction. You're engaged what they call flow more often, but ultimately you're going to be happy. And what that means in the work environment is that creates the same for other people. When you start doing that for everybody, everybody gets aligned, everybody gets on the boat. You start looking at these things, you start talking about them, you're more open with them. People are more transparent. They trust the environment, start to trust their coworkers more, and everybody gets on that in the zone bus. So think about these things. I hope that's helpful. But remember those four things as we wrap this up: job fit, manager, team, culture, to get in that zone. It's all for today. Thanks for listening and watching. Make sure you leave the video a like, subscribe. If you want more information, visit us at centerforvictory.com or give us a call, 724-462-8383. And remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet.